The 2019 NBA draft was a class that entered the league with a ton of hype. The top of the draft featured some big names that were dominating headlines and being debated about heavily, the middle of the draft generated a ton of useful role players, and there were even plenty of gems found at the end of the night that proved a lot of teams wrong. Looking back, there were a ton of home run selections made, but at the same time, there were also a ton of whiffs that teams would probably like to go back and change, which brings us to today's video. Today, we'll be redrafting the top 10 picks in the 2019 NBA draft 4 years later, based on what we know now about the players and the teams involved, and there are definitely a few groups that would love for this to be a real-life possibility. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting things off with the number 1 pick in the draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Ja Morant. They originally selected Zion Williamson here, and while it is still an argument that Zion is the most talented player in the class, I really just don't think the Pelicans would willingly go through the experience that they've dealt with regarding Zion in his first 4 seasons. Williamson has only played in 114 games through 4 seasons, and by switching the pick to Ja Morant, they would be getting a much more reliable superstar player at a position that they are still to this day in need of at point guard. Morant may have a few issues of his own that he's been dealing with, but he has without question proven to be a capable leader of a winning team, helping his Grizzlies finish top 2 in the Western Conference standings back-to-back years, and he's on the court a whole lot more often than Zion too. Next, with the second pick in the draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select Darius Garland. Obviously, the Grizzlies took Morant here, but with him off the board, they would take the next best point guard available, who has also already been named an All-Star. Garland is an incredibly crafty lead guard, and when he has the ball in his hands, he commands the offense at a very high level. He scores an efficient 22 points per game, shooting 46% from the field and 41% from 3. He can pull up at a moment's notice. He's a smart facilitator, dishing out about 8 assists per game, and he would easily step into the role that Morant leaves behind in this hypothetical scenario and thrive. Next, with the third pick in the draft, the New York Knicks select Zion Williamson. This is where the Zion slide ends because his talent is still way too great to overlook, and the Knicks were the team that he was hoping to be drafted by back in 2019, so in this scenario, it would be a match made in heaven. Who knows, if he were to have landed with the Knicks originally, maybe he would have been more motivated to take care of his health and push himself in his recovery process to get back on the court faster, because he would have been in a city he actually wanted to be in from the jump. When he's been on the court, Zion has been nothing short of a beast in the paint, scoring over 26 points per game while shooting the ball over 60% from the field, and with his combination of brute strength, freak athleticism, and craftiness off the dribble, he is a walking mismatch. He just needs to stay healthy. Next, with the fourth pick, the Atlanta Hawks select Tyler Herro. Herro is a pretty polarizing talent in the eyes of fans around the league, but he has proven to be an incredibly reliable secondary scorer who can lead an offense and hit big shots when necessary. He won the 6th Man of the Year award in 2022 because of the huge spark to the offense that he provided to the Heat off the bench, and he followed it up last season with another year scoring over 20 points per game. He's a reliable 3-point shooter as well, making 38% of his threes throughout his career, and at this point in time, some of the Hawks' biggest needs have been floor spacing and secondary shot creation, so Herro would fit in very nicely there long term. Next, with the 5th pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers select RJ Barrett. The Cavs originally hit a home run with this pick back in 2019, taking Darius Garland, but with him being off the board, I could see them pivoting to the best wing talent available, because over the last few seasons, they have struggled mightily to find an answer at the small forward spot. Barrett can play either shooting guard or small forward. He's been a 20-point per game scorer in each of the last 2 seasons. He plays solid defense, and while I do have to admit I'm not always a fan of his shot selection and his efficiency does also need work, he is still a big upgrade over what they have had at small forward over the last few years. Up next, with the 6th pick, the Minnesota Timberwolves select Jordan Poole. The Wolves originally selected one of the biggest busts in the whole draft here, taking Jarrett Culver, so they will happily embrace a redo and just take the best player available, which I believe is Jordan Poole. Poole has had a lot of ups and downs in his career, but what he has shown the most, more than other players that are still available in this draft, is that he's shown that he can impact a championship contender and produce on the big stage, as he helped the Warriors win a title in 2022. Yes, Poole can somewhat play out of control, and he takes some pretty bad shots that he comfortably thinks that he can make, but he also has a natural ability to create space off the dribble and get to his spots, so when he does heat up, it can be worth it, and his scoring output has also increased every single season. Up next, with the 7th pick in the draft, the Chicago Bulls select Keldon Johnson. Keldon Johnson is one of the sneakier young players rising through the ranks, but he just capped off a season in San Antonio where he put up 22 points per game, and the Bulls originally drafted Coby White here, so they were clearly looking for an impact scorer at this spot. You can say that Keldon's production was the result of being the go-to guy on a bad team with nothing to play for, but he's been improving well every single season, and the Bulls would definitely take a guy with his skill set. Up next, with the 8th pick, the New Orleans Pelicans select Nicolas Claxton. The Pelicans had 2 top 10 picks in this year's draft, and in the redo, they would love to be able to use hindsight to knock it out of the park. They originally selected Jaxson here, so they wanted a big man to add to their young core at the time, and Claxton has emerged as one of the best defensive big men in the entire NBA, which is exactly what the team believed they were getting when they took Jaxson. Claxton is an elite shot blocker, he has quick feet making him versatile enough to switch out onto the perimeter and hold his own, and offensively he doesn't force anything and operates as a very good roller in the pick and roll and finisher at the basket, as he shot over 70% from the field. Up next, with the 9th pick, the Washington Wizards select Cam Johnson. The Wizards have been stuck in limbo for years now, swinging and missing in quite a few of their recent drafts, so while the Cam Johnson selection may not be flashy, it's probably what is needed. Johnson knows his role, he punishes defenses as a spot-up shooter, being a career 40% shooter from deep, he moves well without the ball finding his spots, and he defends hard out on the perimeter. He's a winning player that plays winning basketball, which is something the Wizards haven't been very familiar with for a while. And finally, with the 10th pick in the draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Dort. The Hawks also ended up with 2 picks in the top 10 of this draft, and after selecting Herro earlier, in this redo, they would and should prioritize perimeter defense, which has been abysmal for them over the last few seasons. Dort is arguably the best perimeter defender in this draft class, and maybe even in the entire NBA, he definitely ranks amongst the best, after originally going undrafted in 2019, so he would be the biggest riser in this redraft. Dort hounds opposing ball handlers, causing havoc on that end, and while his offensive game is very hit or miss with glaring consistency issues, he has been shining defensively for years in Oklahoma City and would do the same on an Atlanta team in need of perimeter defensive help. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you would want your team to take in a redraft. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.